Hello and welcome. I'm Anand Naidu filling in for Riz Khan. He's one of America's best-known intellectuals, but some of what he's said in the past has stirred intense debate and controversy, especially on issues of race. Dr. Cornel West joined the civil rights movement at a young age and graduated with honors from Harvard. His book, Race Matters, changed the course of America's dialogue on race. Today, he's professor of religion and African American studies at Princeton University, from where he joins us now. Dr. West, thanks for joining us.
It's a blessing to be on the show. Thank you so much for having me, though, brother.
Well, let's start with something that's happening right now. There is a very distinct possibility that the United States could have its first African-American president in just a few months. Yet, if you listen to some of the commentaries and some of the commentators and what they've been saying, this was unthinkable just a few years ago. So has something fundamental changed in America?
Well, there's no doubt that my dear brother Barack Obama and his campaign constitute an unprecedented historical phenomena in the past and present of America. It shows the degree to which the vicious legacy of white supremacy has in fact been punctured in regard to perception, in regard to black faces in high places. At the same time, it's juxtaposed to tremendous social misery in chocolate cities and urban areas where a disproportionate amount of black and poor people do live. And so you get this fascinating juxtaposition of now real access, real possible access to the White House, and actually having a black man as the public face of the American empire, trying to regenerate democratic possibilities within the American empire, and on the other hand, black poor and working poor, white poor and working poor, brown poor, red poor, yellow poor and working poor still suffering.
You are a supporter of Barack Obama, but it is a supporter with some reservations. You've also criticized him. What exactly are your criticisms?
Well, I mean, one, we just keep in mind that my calling is primarily Socratic and prophetic. So for me, I'm fundamentally committed to unarmed truth and unconditional love, whereas Barack Obama's calling is one of progressive governance, and he's committed to winning office and trying to shape policy in such a way that he has some kind of liberal consequence. So that we do overlap, but we also have tension. I guess my first critique, of course, of Obama would be that it would be nice to see much more stress on poverty, much more critique of not just corporate elites, but of the corporate greed that's been running amok in the last 30 years and actually generating a redistribution of wealth from the poor and working class to the upper classes and well-to-do.
So let me ask you this, from what you said earlier on, are you saying that the quest for power, for political power, is not compatible with the truth, with searching for the truth?
There's always a tension between a fundamental commitment to truth and a quest for power. The two are never identical. It could be Socrates, it could be Jesus, it could be Martin Luther King Jr., it could be Fannie Lou Hamer. You always have a need for prophetic critique of those in power. Power intoxicates. Power tends to seduce. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. There's always a need for somebody to tell the truth vis-a-vis the powerful. I would like to see Barack Obama in the White House. I think he's the best of the presidential candidates who are out there, and yet at the same time there are structural constraints on any president. We've got American imperial foreign policy. We've got corporate elites who have a disproportionate influence in shaping public policy and domestic policy, and we have a working class and very poor who are desperate and hungry for a quality way of life.
You once said that you believe that Barack Obama has been listening to people who, in your words, we have reason to distrust. What did you mean by that?
Oh, I mean that any politician who makes it at the level of a Barack Obama or a Sister Hillary Clinton or anybody else tend to be surrounded by spinsters and pundits who do not put the suffering of working people and poor people at the center of their vision. And for me, the starting point is always looking at the world through the lens of the cross, putting a primacy on the catastrophic circumstances that people have to come to terms with, and therefore highlighting the least of these, be they the disabled, be they the elderly, be they workers, it could be gay brothers and lesbian sisters, it could be children. All of those whose suffering tend to be rendered invisible. Any presidential candidate in America given the way in which American culture and society is constituted, namely a culture and society that does not want to look at its own underside, does not want to be truthful about the degree to which it tends to highlight an American dream and downplay the nightmares that people have to come to terms with every day. My role as Socratic prophetic calling is to always note those catastrophic circumstances, be it slavery at the beginning of the nation, be it Jim and Jane Crow within the last 90 years in the middle of the nation's formation, or within the last 40 years, the working people and poor people who have been rendered invisible in light of the Reagan through Bush eras.
You know, Barack Obama has been dogged in his campaign by sentiments expressed by his pastor, Jeremiah Wright. I just want to play you some of those sentiments. We've got some clips, some excerpts here.
Barack knows what it means to be a black man living in a country and a culture that is controlled by rich white people. Hillary can never know that. Hillary ain't never been called a God bless America, God damn America, that's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human.
What did you make of the sentiments expressed by Pastor Wright?
No, Brother Jeremiah Wright is my dear friend, and I've had the opportunity to speak in his church on many occasions. I'm so glad you played the full quote, because you see, there's no God worthy of worship who does not condemn injustice, just as the same God who blesses justice. So that when we say God damn America when America kills innocent people, that's true for any nation. God damn America when America treats human beings less than human, that's true for any nation. It's true for Russia, it's true for Ethiopia, it's true for South Africa, it's true for Guatemala. We must never put the cross under the flag. He is a prophetic Christian preacher, and therefore for him every flag is subordinate to the cross. Now, if in fact you believe that America has never killed innocent people, then God never damns America. But we know God damns slavery in America for the first 100 years. God damns Jim Crow and Jane Crow. God damns the hatred of gays and lesbians. God damns anti-Semitism in America. God damns anti-Arab sensibility in America. God is a God of justice and of love. And so what he was trying to get at is a degree to which there is still injustice in America, and never confuse criticizing injustice in America with anti-Americanism. That any resistance to injustice, be it in America or be it in Egypt, be it in America or be it in Saudi Arabia, is in fact a God-driven activity, because righteous indignation against the treatment of any group of people is an echo of the voice of God for those of us who take seriously the cross.
There are some defenders of Pastor Wright who've been saying that what he said was no different from what the Reverend Martin Luther King has said in the past.
Well, there's no doubt Martin Luther King Jr. made it quite clear. He said that the criminal slaughter of Vietnamese brothers and sisters, especially the children, was a sign of American barbarity. That America was the greatest purveyor of violence in the world in the 1960s. And most importantly, Martin Luther King Jr. had planned to preach, if he had lived long enough, April 8th, that Sunday, April 7th, that Sunday, why America may go to hell, but he would say it with agony and anguish. The difference, though, between Brother Martin Luther King Jr. and my dear brother Jeremiah Wright is that Martin had such deep love. It's that unconditional love in him. And he said it in a way, in a style, where you could almost see the tears flowing from his eyes, because he empathized not just with those who were dealing with catastrophic circumstances, but the very folk who were ruling, because he knew that even rulers who are governed by greed and hatred must reap what they sow. That in that sense, chickens do come home to roost. That's true for elites, be they in the Arab world, the European world, the Asian world, or the American world.
Well, Dr. West, we have an email here. This is from Emma Brown, and she's writing from right here, Washington, D.C. in the United States. And she says, during the Compassion Forum, that's the forum that was held earlier this week in the United States, Barack Obama had to constantly defend his views, whereas Hillary Clinton articulated hers. Reverend Wright seems to have ironically put Barack on the defensive. Is it time for African Americans to realize that some of this church rhetoric is hurting, not helping?
Well, again, when we say not hurting, we have to look at whether it's hurting for political reasons, linked to political expediency, or whether it's hurting because Americans don't want to come to terms with the truth. We saw this with the May 18th speech in Philadelphia, that Brother Barack Obama gave a masterful speech from the vantage point of politics, but from the vantage point of truth, it still had much to be said. Much more needs to be said about it, so that, yes, in terms of an election context, in terms of politics, we have to be very, very sensitive to the mainstream white fears, insecurities, and anxieties. But keep in mind, when we talk about truth, it's going to hurt people. In the same way, the truth about myself, the truth about black people is going to hurt me and black people. There's no such thing as truth-telling that is not unsettling, unnerving, and in some ways unhousing.
Dr. West, we're going to take a break right now. After the break, more of our conversation with Dr. Cornel West. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.